You're listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, today featuring Dave McKinstry.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to another episode of the Azure DevOps Podcast. Go online to azuredevops.show to see the other episodes we've had so far. I'm really excited to speak with today's guest, Dave McKinstry. Dave is a program manager with the Azure DevOps Services community team, connecting with partners and customers, spreading modern practices, and helping developers succeed with DevOps and Azure. Dave, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Jeffrey. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. Been, 8 months since we've seen each other back in Redmond?
I think so, and that's okay. We'll do it again soon, I'm sure.
Awesome. Well, it certainly has been a wild ride since the launch of Azure DevOps. How has it been for you?
It's been nonstop excitement. A lot of good things happening in the community. We're very happy with what we see going on.
Awesome. And now folks are still getting caught up on what this launch is, and there's a Azure DevOps Services and Azure DevOps Server. Which side do you work on?
Well, the answer is both. We have effectively a unified code base that supports both sets of products. So we have the TFS, Azure DevOps Server side, which is our on-premise platform, which I'm sure all your listeners know about. And of course, the Azure DevOps Service, which is our formerly known as VSTS. They're basically the same code base, so I work on both. Now, that said, I work on both. My work as a program manager is not doing a ton of the engineering. I love writing code. I still write code, but I don't deliver code into the feature branches. Instead, what I do is I work with our communities, our people. So, for example, this launch, this is a kind of an interesting one for us. If you think about how we've historically done launches, big announcements, these big, let's get somebody on stage for a keynote. We did things very different this time. We actually went through standard social channels, released Azure DevOps to the community through blogs, through our partners, our MVPs, through the people out there who touch our products. So we had this community-focused thing. Now, obviously, Ignite happens. You get some time on Keynote there and other things happening. But this is something that was very much a ground up. It wasn't, hey, let's go on stage and do this big thing. Let's actually launch it from the ground level, from the community level. And so that's kind of what we've been working on. And that's why this has been a very different launch for us.
Awesome.
And it launched for both server and service, but service being the big one right now.
Awesome. Now, are you going to be at Ignite as well?
Actually, I won't. Most of my teammates will be there, but I've got some other commitments at that time. Sorry about that. I wish I could see some of your listeners there.
No
Love
worries.
to shake some hands.
Now, you've been in this space for a long time now. It's only been since 2011 when anybody in the industry was talking about DevOps, and it's been a big change over the last 7-8 years. But what's been your journey through what we now talk about as modern practices in shipping software?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny, Jeffrey. You and I go way back as MVPs, long before I joined Microsoft. I was a C# MVP back in 2004. So I was working for a Microsoft partner as a consultant. 2004, 2005, I shifted over and actually opened a consulting business focused around this new technology, this brand new project coming up. The term was new and people hadn't really heard of it much. And it was ALM, which is kind of funny these days.
Now, some younger people might not even know what that stands for.
Yes. So I'm going to go back before that. This is when we were going from a transition from a term SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle, to ALM, Application Lifecycle Management. And Microsoft released TFS, Team Foundation Server, and we said this is going to make a big difference. This is not just a bunch of random tools. This is about focused on improving developer productivity through managing the application lifecycle. Work management, before Agile was really big, but obviously going in that direction, pushing in that direction, bug tracking, whatever else, moving into your source control, your CI/CD. But at that point, the concept of CI/CD was much different.
Oh yeah.
Into where we are today. So over those years, I spent many years helping customers implement these solutions on older technologies. Because some people would look at this and say, DevOps is part of ALM. And other people would say, ALM is part of DevOps. Well, in the end, we turned up and said, it doesn't really matter, but we're going to treat, as the industry as a whole, DevOps as the big picture. So DevOps is a superset of ALM focused not just on how to build software and bring it efficiently into production, but also about the entire feedback loop. And that's been a big change in focus in the industry and in my life. Now, since then, I sold a consulting company. I moved on into Microsoft. I actually worked with the Microsoft field for a number of years, working directly with customers. And over the past year or so, I've been working actually with the product engineering team. And that's been a lot of fun.
So going back to 2005 and the continuous integration conversation, some of our customers who are trying to do automated deployments and get to continuous delivery today are still learning what steps are required to get to the continuous integration mark. How is it with your customers?
Well, the answer is all the above. The nice thing about DevOps is it is causing people to think in the right direction. The problem is a lot of people look at APs and say, I need continuous deployment. That's what I need. That may or may not be what you need, and that is part of the overall DevOps story, but it's not the DevOps story. So we have customers that come to us and say, Dave, I really need to do CI/CD. Chances are they do. But if you have a software process that takes 6 months to deliver software, and then you can hit a button and it's in production immediately, well, that's great for that last 30 seconds, but it still took you 6 months to do something you should have done in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, right? So we have to definitely meet customers where they are. The nice thing about DevOps is you're never done. We have customers that are at the very beginning of their journey. They look at it and say, in order to get to where I want to be, which is always a moving target, I need to adopt X. I need to start developing like this. I need to start testing like this. I need to start, moving things through my deployment pipelines like this. And those are probably all things they need to do. You do what you can. You continuously improve one step at a time. Automation deployment, we have some great tools out there. Obviously, Azure DevOps, our pipelines tool set, we use it internally for all of our stuff. It makes it very easy. And we obviously help customers in that space. We try to make sure they understand how to use those tools effectively. In the standard Microsoft way, we have a lot of things that make it easy to push buttons through wizards. Lots of startup templates and stuff that make it easy to get there.
Right.
But we also recognize a lot of customers are out there saying, I really need more script focused. I'll use the term DevOps engineer, which I don't like that term, am used to writing scripts and doing things on the command line to make things work. And we're, of course, trying to address that audience as well, YAML files and things such as that. So that's our product side of the thing. But in terms of our customer, we have all. I got off the phone with a customer this morning that's actually doing pretty well, but they're talking about some complex rollouts in terms of pushing out to multiple data rings and progressive exposure and canary deployments and blue-green, all the wonderful things we talk about in DevOps. Mm-hmm. They're really well along, and they were coming in saying, let's talk about how we can get to the next level. But by and large, back to your original question, where are the customers today? I still have a lot of customers that are saying, I have some automated builds. Now what do I do?
Right. And whether it be stats from the Better Business Bureau or elsewhere, most companies are small companies, certainly in the U.S., and the Fortune 500 and the Fortune 50 are doing lots and lots with software, and it's always interesting to talk about those. But in addition, you've got these just thousands and thousands of companies that are smaller companies, and thereby they're smaller teams, probably less than 10 people. A lot of teams that we come across that are 2 and 3 developers, and they're doing everything. And so, they're by nature able to move quicker from a business perspective, and they can, if they had the technical capability, they could deploy every day because they're talking directly with the business drivers and don't have lots of other processes going around to decide what to do. And they're still learning, okay, great, I don't have bureaucracy, but I just don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, and you're exactly right. I think that's kind of funny. We have all the above. You have small customers that are still living 10 years in the past. We have large customers that are, like the one I was talking about this morning, very much in the future. They're actually well on track and doing great things. But by and large, the smaller customers are able to move faster. They're able to adopt more quickly. It's probably a matter of prioritizing these types of processes and technologies and cultures to actually make it work for the smaller companies. Because I'm sure you've worked on smaller teams as well, Jeffrey, where, I would like to do DevOps, but I'm being told I have to write all these features, and I can't convince my boss that,
right,
that improving process is better than just churning out features in the same old-fashioned ways.
Right. When's it going to be
So
done?
all the above exists. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You can spend all the time you want on that as long as all these things are done by tomorrow. Yeah. Which of course is the continuing train wreck that we've had with software development over the years.
So with these companies going forward to implement DevOps, and then their view is, well, automated deployments, or I'm on VMs, I need to go to PaaS, or however they view it. How do you see the folks that are still thinking about, or maybe they have 2 automated tests in their entire software suite and they're trying to move forward?
It's continuing adoption. So the nice thing and the bad thing about DevOps is you're going to continually move forward. You're going to fix things, make things better, and break things at the same time. If we look at our journey, we started out doing a lot of Agile investments because it took us 2 to 3 years to write a product. Mm-hmm. And you know, in today's world, that's ridiculous. But 8 years ago, it was only kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was actually somewhat acceptable. So we had to learn to deliver software faster. Of course, okay, now we learned Agile, we learned Scrum, we could deliver software faster. What breaks next? And there's not just
we ship bugs faster.
Well, exactly. So now, maybe we better focus on quality. We spent over 18 months investing on testing, in moving a lot of these end-to-end integration tests into good, solid unit tests, into changing how developers view quality. And it's actually a big difference. It's a big cultural shift. When you're being told, we were joking earlier about write the features, get it done. Can you have it done tomorrow? When you're focused on that, you're focused on churning out code, not delivering value to your customers. You have to change that entire mindset. Because if you turn out a bunch of bugs and you throw out, I met the feature request, but it's unusable, that's not value. And so you have to really change a lot of thought processes. So it's not just the big company, small company, but in some cases it's and I don't mean this from an age perspective or from a culture perspective, older, newer. If you're in the older cultures and you're used to top-down mandates and you're used to, my job is a developer, I write code. Somebody else's job is quality, they check code. That means I've deferred the need to write quality. In my mind, I don't have to do it because somebody else is doing it. No, it's everybody's job. And I know this is Agile 101. This is the stuff that probably a lot of your listeners, everyone knows that. Well, the fact is not everyone does.
All right. And with that, we'll pause for a word from our sponsor.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software engineering firm and Microsoft Gold partner, empowering development teams to be their best. ClearMeasure equips developers with the DevOps tools, methods, and automation necessary to focus on building their applications, rather than wrestling with builds, deployments, or environments. Click clear-measure.com to see whether a DevOps implementation is for you.
And we're back. So we're talking about quality and Agile one-on-one. So how do developers move forward with that?
Well, they do what hopefully all of us are doing, and that's learning. Learn, practice, review, build, experiment, take the feedback. That's the entire life cycle type of thing, right? That's you state what you want to do, say your hypothesis. I want to improve my process by doing this. You try it and you do it. And you learn from it. You learn not only from changing your own stuff, but also from looking at the outside, from listening to podcasts like this one, to give you little ideas that say, maybe if I tried this, I can do better. And it's about that growth mindset, continuing to move in and say, I want to learn to do things better. It makes your life easier, but you have to do that. Mm-hmm. And to do that, to some extent, you have to allocate some of your mental capacity away from just, I'm here to write code, to I'm here to provide value to my customers. And writing code's a big part of it, but I can do much better.
There's a lot of practices or even just ways of thinking that aren't particularly new, that are several decades old. Folks who have adopted Agile, I mean, that's 17 years old now. Mm-hmm. The mindset of how to be close to your customer, and the manifesto for Agile software development. And there's method for architectural blueprints that goes back to Rational Software in 1995 that still, to my knowledge, hasn't been, there's no better replacement for that, a better approach, because you still have to draft architecture diagrams. So just learning and reading up on the generations that have even come before us. Fred Brooks started software in 1959, and he revised his book, The Mythical Man Month, in I think it was 2001, and he made a new foreword to the book where, I'm paraphrasing, he basically said, "Yeah, everything I wrote was right."
Yeah. And that's true. I mean, what's old is new. There are certain things that are absolutely common sense. And if we stepped out of our work lives, we'd recognize that. And when you're in the day-to-day grind, when you're in a culture, when you're in a specific scenario, sometimes it's hard to see that.
So with DevOps, a lot of people say that it's dev and ops coming back together, which if you go back to the original days of software where it was just some person, figuring out how to get some machine to do something.
Yep.
How did this culture of a dev and ops divide even take hold that we have to bring it back together?
Well, I think it's part of the evolution of the ecosystem. The world has become more complex. There was a time when I would build my own systems. I was writing software at the assembler level, and I understood more or less everything I needed to about that entire box. Now we go back to our discussion earlier about the enterprise as being moving slower with more governance and whatnot else. They've got some real things. They've got large data centers, lots of compute, lots of applications, lots of governance. They may have lots of legislative, legal issues they have to watch out for. So there's this entire, I need to have this command and control mentality to run software. I need to make sure it's stable. And that's valuable. That makes sense. And at the same time, you have the other side, the developer saying, my job is here to write software and to build things out and make it happen. And these two don't get along. DevOps, obviously bring them together. But I want to go on to that term for a second and actually talk about a bit of a pet peeve of mine.
Okay.
It's the term DevOps as a role. I want to hire a DevOps engineer.
Well, haven't you ever hired an Agile engineer?
Well, yeah, but what I want to have is I want to actually look at DevOps as a culture in the team. So it's dev and ops working together. And if you're hiring the DevOps person, what am I doing? I'm inserting a third role in there. What I want is dev and ops to be using good DevOps practices together.
Right. The recruiters just need something to call it. Well, actually, my joke back in 2007, I remember some recruiters were listing positions as an Agile software engineer. They literally wanted that to be in the title. It's like if you were an auto mechanic, said, "No, I'm a Snap-on mechanic," or "I'm a Craftsman mechanic." It's just a tool.
Absolutely, and we do have different skill sets. We do have different capabilities. Back when I was starting this game, it was possible to have one person do everything. That's not really possible. So you do have to recognize that we have different skill sets and different core objectives, but we have bigger umbrella objectives we also work towards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So one thing that I've observed is that if you were to take these same methods and practices and drop them into the industry 15 years ago, or just back to the point where you say, okay, maybe we have VMware and Hyper-V, but everybody's servers are in their own data center in whatever town that they're in. There's no AWS, there's no Azure, there's no Google Cloud. And you take these practices and put them there, it would be very different than today in the cloud world with Azure, because you have skill sets around replacing hard drives that fail and spiking the drives or shredding them to make sure that the data, there's no way anybody can get a hold of the data, and screwing servers into the 42U cabinet in a data center. All of those skill sets, when we're using Azure, there's so many tasks that used to be part of ops that just aren't relevant anymore.
Well, yeah, basically what's happening as we move to the cloud, all the public cloud vendors out there, is the operations able to focus on things that are more valuable to the business? Is screwing screws in to put a server in a rack really that valuable? Well, you need to have the capacity, but and I'll tell you, that's kind of a nice, easy, fun task because you can kind of turn your brain off for a few minutes during an otherwise stressful job. But the fact is that's not adding a lot of value. So there is a large change. I think these things are all happening at the same time. DevOps is happening. DevOps can't happen without a dynamic cloud infrastructure, the ability to dynamically allocate and deallocate resources. Can it? Well, yes, it can. Like I say, it's all a continuum. But realistically, to do it well, you can't worry about, oh, well, I have to go through procurement to get this other server so that I can start this next phase of stuff. That just completely breaks DevOps.
Right.
So having the ability to say, it's approved, go. The resources I need to run are there, go. And at the same time, of course, now hopefully the operations side of the equation is sitting there looking at saying, am I maintaining the security I need to? Am I meeting my corporate policies and goals? Am I governing costs of the resources? It's easy for a dev to say, of course I need the biggest machine there is, but somebody has to pay for it. Right. So there's still things that are really very valuable in the cloud world and in the DevOps world, but they're different, I think, more so for the operations team than for the dev team.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion going on about what the modern skill sets are and what the developers need to be doing in a DevOps world and what essentially systems engineers need to be doing in a DevOps world. Because, I mean, these two career tracks, developers and IT pros, have existed for a couple decades now. And so you have a lot of people trying to figure out what they should change on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact is these roles are very much evolving in both cases. Developers are spending more time in script. Depending on your specific team, the developers may be doing infrastructure as code and maybe actually setting up what they want with the operations team in the review cycle and making sure they can handle the capacity and things such as that. But it very much depends. Some teams are going to have very much the developers, or rather the operations team, focused on infrastructure as code that developers don't work on. Mm-hmm. And I apologize for all the background beeps.
Yeah, maybe the listeners don't know. You're working out.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, not working out too hard. More of a mental workout, let's say. But I'm actually on a standing desk treadmill.
So whether you're coding or whether you're talking, you're walking. I mean, you're exercising the whole time.
On a good day, I'm getting about 30,000 steps.
Wow!
At the desk.
That's amazing. So tell us about this setup, because I'm trying to picture your 6-monitor command station on top of a treadmill.
Yeah, no, it's not that bad. So I have a standing desk, a fairly common standing desk. It's actually a fairly nice one, hardwood veneers and lacquer and whatnot else. So it's not just the standard white one. But it's always raised. And then I went out. There's some companies. There's a local one here in the United States that sells a walking treadmill for I think about $400.
Okay.
About a year ago, I couldn't stand at a desk for long. I could run marathons. I ran marathons. Oh, wow. But I standing at a desk, after about half an hour, I was done. I had to sit down. And I don't know what exactly happened. I stood a little more and I stood a little more. And at some point, standing wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let me try this treadmill thing. So I tried it separately. And then I realized that if I bought this $400 treadmill, it was kind of an all or nothing, because it's separate from the desk and it is portable, but I'm not going to move it every time I want to sit down.
Right.
So my options are I'm standing at the desk, I'm sitting at the desk, or I've taken a notebook and sat down in a chair someplace else. Okay. And by and large, I'm walking on the treadmill. And at the end of the day, I'm not feeling tired. It's good.
Wow. And so I'm guessing you're wearing running shoes or walking shoes.
Yeah. Right now I'm in running shoes, but yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And like I said, it's probably not good to have the camera on because I'm not dressed for the occasion.
Oh yeah. So you wouldn't do a TV show like that?
No, I probably wouldn't. No. When Channel 9, things like that, I absolutely dress appropriately and actually use a chair.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see a picture of that setup. That's got to be amazing. Well, I envy you. I tried a stand-up desk, and now I'm back to sitting.
I will tell you, my opinion is it's easier to walk than it is to stand.
Ah, okay.
When I stand for too long, my back starts hurting.
Oh, because you're motionless somehow.
Exactly. When I'm actually moving, the muscles keep going just a little. I'm not running. Mm-hmm. I'm walking.
Yeah.
And it's enough to keep things moving, enough to keep me feeling okay. And it's usually not a problem. And, just like, if you're sitting at your desk, you'll take occasional breaks, go get coffee breaks. Well, I'll do that too. But the need to actually do that from a physical perspective isn't a big deal. And the other thing is I actually believe that I think better. So that, like the conversation we're having right now, it's easier for me to open my mind and talk to somebody because my body's in motion. As soon as I sit down, I'm really confining myself. It might just be me, and I know it's not just me because other people have this too, but the ability to actually move and think is much better for the brain. Okay.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. I think about what I put into my mouth in the morning, what I eat and drink, kind of in the first half of the day, as affecting my mind. Yeah, our profession, if we can't think clearly, we're toast.
Absolutely. That's where the keyboard's there as an extension, but it's the brain that's actually making the difference.
Right. Exactly. We look at you and I. We look at our hands, and we don't have the thick calluses. We have these like smooth hands from smooth keyboards. But for me, I choose 21 years that the keyboard has been an extension of my fingers.
Yeah.
Just an aside, my daughter's going into 6th grade, and they're doing stuff on the computer. They have not been taught how to type. I took a formal typing class in school on electronic typewriters in 7th grade, and that has been I can't imagine not having been properly trained in typing in this profession.
Yep, it is a different world. It really is. The ability to. I mean, when you and I were in school, and I think I predate you a little bit.
Oh yeah, I'm 23. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm 25. No, but I took the same typing class from a completely different teacher in a completely different school district, and it was the kind of thing where I looked at it, I said, I'm going to need this to do computers. That's before people actually in high school thought about doing computers.
Yeah.
So for me, the typing class, everyone I was with was thinking about how they'd go on to do secretarial stuff.
Yeah.
It was very, very different world. And these days, it's just accepted. You need to type.
That's right. Now, did your typing class teach any kind of shorthand?
Nope.
Neither did mine.
Luckily. My first time at a computer, when my dad had a 16K TRS-80, he had me load a blackjack game. And so I went through the C load, enter. He asked me to type RUN, and I, with my hunt and peck keyboard, ARE space YOU space IN, question mark. And he said, no, that's run. You run the program. RUN, run. and somehow from there, I end up being a computer engineer.
There you go. It's just amazing how many things have changed. And it's interesting to see what the next generation is going to pick up when, my daughter is going to finish high school in 7 more years. And then it'll be a very different world.
Yeah, my son just left for college. I'm now officially an empty nester. But that actually brings me back, this changing world, what our kids are going to see, back to what we were talking about earlier, about what's expected of operations, what's expected of developers.
Yeah.
And what do those roles even mean? I think they were fairly well defined in the past, and they're becoming less defined. And it's not just about developers doing more infrastructure deployment coding, potentially more things that the DevOps engineer that doesn't exist, that role that doesn't exist, I keep talking about, that role would do. The DevOps practices of automation that a lot of times developers own more of. That wasn't in the developer's wheelhouse 10 years ago.
Right.
You'd have one person that understood how to set up a CI build on TeamCity or whatever else, and that's as good as you got. Now it's actually really part of the day-to-day activities of many developers, and in some cases, operations people too, depending on who's picking up that side of the workload. So these two are blurring together. While we have these dev and ops roles, you really are becoming more of a DevOps team, and who's doing it, it depends on who's able to do it and what their focus is, and what their skill sets are, what their gifts are. But I was also reading one industry was talking about, I'm trying to remember these specifics, was talking about the fact, for example, in the future, developers are going to need to know how to do machine learning. And I can see that as a real possible extension.
For someone who's never even heard that term, or maybe heard it, but never, can you just quick summary on what the heck that is?
Yeah, so this is a data science term where you're actually teaching computers to analyze data and help make decisions based on it. And it's very powerful, and it's really making a big impact on some big businesses. We have no lack of data. Everyone knows that we are collecting data faster than we ever have before. Storage is cheap. The question is what you do with that data, and machine learning is programming patterns. It is actually creating models, training the models, and actually testing those models to see if you're getting the decisions from the computer that you would expect. You might have historically thought of it as an artificial intelligence type of thing. That's kind of what you're doing. You're teaching the computer to think and solve specific problems, likely business problems, looking for anomalies, looking for things that don't look right or do look right. A lot of people look at this for like preventive maintenance. If your system, whatever hardware it is running, and all of a sudden something starts making a funny sound, machine learning could say, well, gee, that funny sound is out of the ordinary, therefore I should start down these paths.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that can save company millions of dollars by having the computer think in ways that we can't, but using the guidance we give it through machine learning.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because some people are starting to apply it and blaze the trail on what the heck it means. That and also IoT, putting little computers in various places, collecting data. And these are little software applications, purpose-built software applications, but they have to be coded and verified and packaged and released and configured on whatever type of computer is that production environment. And then they all have to be monitored. And that's the whole DevOps chain.
It can be, and it's actually a very complex one. It's a difficult one if you think about it. How do you, so the idea of having these little devices, that's not new. The router you have in your closet is probably something running the embedded version of Linux. And you could say, well, that's IoT. Well, no, kind of, not really, but it's the foundation of what becomes. But now we're talking about how you actually take data from that. Usually these IoT devices are tied to sensors of some sort. They collect data of some sort. Can't say what it is, whether it's camera or vibrations or who knows what. Traffic light data, whatever it happens to be. But then you have to actually be able to bring this together. And that becomes one of the big challenges. And then back to your point on DevOps, now you have all these devices out there, as I'm sure you're aware. So you have all these consumer Linux devices. You have the whether it's your router or your microwave, you have the connected home types of things. Those are all out there, and the ability to create these devices to add value to your home has been very good. Having these embedded computers could do things was very good. But thinking about this from a DevOps perspective or an operations perspective, how you make sure those devices are secure, updated, patched.
Yeah, everybody has all these little computers running around their house and all these Wi-Fi plugs. All of them are running software, and who knows what the next hack is gonna bring.
Well, right, and that's really the big problem. So if we look at IoT, there's two parts of it. One, from an industrial perspective, is really about bringing the data in. But the other side, the DevOps side you were talking about, is how do we actually keep those devices up and running? How do we keep them secure? How do we patch them? There's a lot of things that have to happen there, and that is an evolving space. I mean, there's definitely some good practices that are already established, but it's young. And of course, as you know, as fast as we can move, the hackers are doing one step better. They're trying to hack as fast as they can to figure out what we're missing.
Right.
So the idea of DevOps in the IoT world, the idea of operations, of security there, we talked earlier about being able to make sure operations is doing higher value things. There's a higher value thing for you. And it's a lot more difficult than screwing a rack in.
Right, definitely. Well, as we wrap up, what should our listeners do next? Any resources they should look at?
So there's a lot of them. And of course, I'm coming from the Microsoft perspective, which is very much part of the community. But we have a DevOps resource center. It's possible that one of my predecessors on this call have already talked about, but the URL http aka.ms/DevOps. And this has a lot of resources from a concept perspective, from practice we do. And again, the ability to go out there and educate yourself and learn and start figuring out what your next step is so you can help evolve your culture, your process, your people, continuous learning, continuous improvement. And maybe one of these days, one of your listeners will be teaching me, and that'd be great. Awesome.
Well, thanks so much, Dave, for visiting with me. It was fun.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I really appreciate it.
Until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.AzureDevOps.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.